Franco Colapinto is a hot topic again in Formula 1 after the disappointing performance of Jack Doohan. The French team wanted to keep the Australian rookie on his toes from the very first race, and after the latest crash in Miami, there are strong reports that he's driven his last race for the team. But can Colapinto bring the team to a significantly stronger level than where they are right now? And more importantly, is he really stepping in at Imola, or is this just a bluff towards Doohan? Jack Doohan had a very poor start to the season and is one of the drivers who is yet to score points in the sport. Although the last crash in Miami was a great indicator as to why he fumbles under pressure, ruining Lawson's race, it just goes to show that this is a ruthless sport that doesn't forgive anyone when it comes to poor performance. The seats are numbered, and if you are slacking off, then you're getting replaced in a heartbeat. Although the only exception to this rule, of course, is Lance Stroll. Now, reports from the race state that a change is ready to be made between Colapinto and Doohan, something that Flavio Briatore has advocated for a very long period. The painful fact is that Miami was the first weekend in which Doohan managed to outqualify Gasly. However, the race of the Aussie has been a gut-wrenching one for his career, because if you go out in the manner he did, then not many other teams would be interested in your services. On the other hand, we've seen that Colapinto had an immediate impact at Williams when he replaced Sargent last year. However, the crashes he's had, especially the one in Brazil, made him a bit of a liability, because he would definitely have to work on the racecraft before he gets utilised as a full-time F1 driver with Alpine. Nevertheless, when you have Flavio Briatore vouching for you and your talents, then I guess you have a bright future ahead if you know how to make the most out of it. Now, we need to be objective here and to look at the wider picture. Was it all Doohan's fault? Alpine had a very tricky start to the season, which was unexpected to say the least, as they were leapfrogged by all of the teams on the grid. Nevertheless, Gasly managed to outqualify Doohan 5-1 in the 6 GPs they've participated in so far, with the result being equalled in the sprint events 1-1. But on average, the Frenchman is 0.367 seconds ahead, which, while not being that big of a margin in an era so close like the one we're in, could be the difference between P8 and P14. Still, the crash in Miami has put a lot of pressure on the Aussie star, and according to Doohan, who was seen being consoled by his father after the race, he just had nowhere to go and it was a pure racing incident. Try explaining that to Lawson, who is also struggling to score points with Racing Bulls after the poor spell he's had with Red Bull and being dropped just 2 races deep in the season. Elaborating on the crash in Miami that might be the last one of his career in Formula 1, Doohan was adamant that he couldn't do anything, adding, "I haven't seen the replay, so I don't want to come in too much, but it seemed that I was squeezed into turn 1, nowhere really to go, and unavoidable contact and damage. Disappointing, but not much I could do. The damage by the puncture was quite a lot. I was also digging into, I don't even know what to call it, the front left gurney or whatever. The damage was too much. We don't want to put damage onto the track or debris. It was quite the journey to get back here, so I don't want to be repeating this moment." Well, it seems like you won't have to, because Briatore has already planned the replacement for you. Even in the serial Drive to Survive, we saw the circumstances under which Doohan received his seat. Either you succeed at first or see yourself being doomed from day one. Again, the difference between Gasly and Jack isn't that big, 0.3 of a second, but ultimately there's nothing that Doohan can do if he crashes the car constantly. It's a cruel world that we're living in. What doesn't bode well for Doohan is the fact that Alpine signed a contract with another youngster, Paul Aron. The Estonian driver showed extraordinary speed last year in Formula 2, and he was part of Mercedes Academy, but Alpine managed to secure his services as a reserve driver in the current season. What this goes to show is that Aron will be a legitimate option for the seat once the time comes, and the time seems to have come, and it's Imola. Alpine has yet to issue an official statement regarding the replacement of Doohan, and until they do so, everything we're talking about here, of course, is just pure analysis and breaking down the numbers that are not going in Doohan's favour. Regarding the Colapinto move, what is worth mentioning is that while he's signed with Alpine as a reserve driver, his rights are still being held by Williams. This means that the Grove-based squad has the opportunity to bring him to their family whenever they feel like it, although the current situation doesn't really open much breathing space for Colapinto to drive for them in the foreseeable future, despite the fact that he came as a product of their own academy. But was all impact from Doohan negative in Alpine? According to Ted Kravitz, the Aussie managed to make great setups of the car, which is something that Gasly was able to use to a wider extent. And when talking about this, the Sky F1 pundit said Gasly started from the pit lane because he changed his suspension back to much more like Doohan's setup. One thing that Doohan's doing is good setup changes to optimize the car, and Pierre Gasly felt that the direction he's taken was much worse than what Doohan was doing. So he did what Doohan was doing and got his setup. So that's something that Jack Doohan is doing correctly. One thing that we need to note here is that Alpine is probably the team that saw a lot of drivers and staff come and go in such a short period of time. Ever since Alonso decided to leave back in 2022 and join Aston Martin from the next season, the bombshell from Piastri was just too much to handle. It also resulted in Otmar Schaffnauer being sacked from the team and an entire change in the leadership, with Alpine having broken ties with Alain Prost, a four-time world champion himself. So when you have people leaving left and right on such short notice, you tend to understand one thing: this is not a good looking picture for you as a team. At the end of the day, even Esteban Ocon left for Haas, understanding that there isn't a future for him with the French dream of having native drivers compete in the foreseeable future. Nevertheless, Doohan showed good pace, and maybe 7 races are not enough to judge his ability to participate in the sport, especially when your other driver is struggling to score points as well. If we had a situation like the one of Williams in 2023, when Albon scored the majority of the points while Sargent was accountable for 1 point only throughout the entirety of the season, then it would have been a very different talk. Right now, Alpine has 7 points that are scored from Gasly only, and although many of you think that it's going to be an indigo copy situation like the one with Williams in 2023, that might not be the case. 2 other rookies are yet to score points as well, Bortoleto and Lawson, and if you consider the fact that Lawson drove 2 races with one of the fastest cars on the grid, then you might think that Lawson is not as bad as the media projects him to be. Nevertheless, it does seem like Briatore made up his mind, and the conditions are going to remain the same as when the contract was signed. Pressure is on from day one. If you can deliver, good. If not, then here is the exit door. We found a driver who might put more pressure on Gasly and push our team to the midfield. All of this is very important for the future of Alpine, because from 2026 onwards, they are switching to Mercedes-powered engines. If rumours around the paddock are to be believed, then we're going to receive a massive advantage for every car that is powered by the Mercedes engines, Alpine included. Of course, this doesn't mean they'll fight for race wins all of a sudden, but we shouldn't be surprised if they are in the top 5 because of this powerful tool they'll have in their hands. However, they will need 2 high-performing drivers in order to achieve this, and with all this in mind, what do you think about the swap between Doohan and Colapinto? And more importantly, do you think that this will make a lot of sense for the long-term picture? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.